It's episode 651 of the Locked On Texas Rangers podcast. On today's show, I'm breaking down where the Rangers stand 2/3 of the way through the season. What have they done well? What have they done poorly? And looking ahead at what they need to find out before the end of the season. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On to the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Today is Tuesday, August 9th, and your Rangers are 48-60, literally 2/3 of the way, almost exactly. Actually, I do think exactly through this season. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment anything below. Now, let's take a look at where this team is. Like I said, they are 48-60. And where did they get to the 60 loss mark last year? Well, they got to it on July 20th against Detroit. They were 35-60 as opposed to 48-60. So significantly better there. Granted, the season did start a little bit later, so that would have happened a little bit later on. But the Rangers got to 42 wins. They got their 42nd win on August 15th, and they had 76 losses. So empirically, the Rangers are doing significantly better than they did last year. This was a year that was looked at for a stepping stone moment, a show that you're not absolute trash, not bottom of the barrel. And the Rangers have done that so far this season. For the year, they are only being outscored by 1 run. That's right, they have a -1 run differential, which 1-run game for the entire season is not exactly something that inspires confidence, because that is what has gotten the Rangers into this hole. They are 6-24 in these 1-run games, have scored 97 runs to 115 given up, and that is a 20% win percentage. That is absolutely horrible. The Rangers actually have a winning record in blowout games, with going 14-13. They have outscored opponents by 9 runs in those blowout games. They've done well in interleague games, but really the season comes down to how poorly they have done against Houston and against Seattle. Against Seattle, they are 2-11. Also, that 0-6 series against Baltimore, season series, I should say, really did not do them any favors, especially that 3-game sweep in Baltimore. All 1-run losses, all games the Rangers should have, could have, and would have won if not for this mysterious presence, whatever is going on in these 1-run losses. And now part of it is because of the bullpen struggles. Part of it is maybe because of some managerial decisions for Woody, but it's just whatever it's been, it's not something that's sustainable. The Rangers have been better in 1-run games as of late. They did just go 500 in 1-run games against the White Sox, who are a good team, do have a good bullpen, and a good veteran lineup that knows how to win ball games. But the Rangers did win one of those games. They did. And it was fine. It was nice. The Rangers are in a better place this year than they were last year. I don't think they will continue this 1-run nonsense next year. They're hopefully going to have a better bullpen next year that is going to help them. They will have guys who will have a little bit more experience. Some of the everyday guys on this team are still pretty darn young. Jonah Heim, this is really his 2nd full season in the big leagues. It's taken him a while to get here. Same with Adolis Garcia, who is, even though he is a little bit older, he still doesn't have that much experience of getting through an entire season. And the only full season that he's been on a major league roster was during an absolutely terrible one last year. They also have guys like Leody Taveras, who is learning how to be an everyday player. Nathaniel Lowe, who this is his, I believe, 3rd season as a big league regular? 2nd season. Yeah, 2nd season. He had 21 games with Tampa Bay in 2020 and 50 in 2019. So he is also still a relatively pretty darn young player. He's 26 years old, and most of these guys are still figuring out how to be everyday big league regulars, including that Rangers rotation, which has been a big old bugaboo on the season. There have been 2 very bright spots in Martin Perez and John Gray as of late, but John Gray is on the IL with a left oblique strain. And I'm not exactly sure when he's going to get back. It's probably going to be at least another a week and a half, maybe more. We'll see how well he recovers. I haven't heard anything since he went on the IL, but it's still going to be a hot minute before he gets back into that starting rotation. But the overall point is the Rangers wanted to get a little bit better than they were last year. And then next year is when they really, really go hard and need to contend and need to be flat out great, or at least just markedly better, at least above 500 next year. And, it's possible that if the Rangers don't make the playoffs next year, there have been a lot of expectations on this fast rebuild. It might be curtains for John Daniels and Chris Young, and pretty much anyone else is up for fair game if the Rangers aren't markedly better next year. This year was always going to be a stretch to compete to get into the playoffs. The Rangers talk like they wanted to do that this year. They probably should have signed one more starting pitcher if they were going to do that. But the three guys that they thought might be ready, might be able to be solid big league contributors in the starting rotation, just have not turned out to be quite up to snuff. The bullpen hasn't been quite good enough to sustain their early season success, and there are still some holes to fix on this club in left field and third base. Figuring out what those are, and even the everyday DH might be a little bit of a question mark up in the air next year. But this club has shown some promise. They have been better. They have been fun. There have been actual very good players, more than just Adolis Garcia on the roster in the second half, and there have definitely been it's been much more watchable baseball, which for me, as someone who has to watch every single game, I should say. But it's been a much better product on the field. Yes, the one-run losses have been frustrating, but it shows where this fan base is. It shows where the team has come, that people were actually giving a crap about the losses. Last year, it was like, yeah, this team sucks. There's no one here. Of course they're going to lose. Oh, it was a one-run loss as opposed to a 10-run loss? Cool. That's slightly better, but their run differential was almost at minus 200 last year. That's how horrible this team was last year. And granted, they did make some big signings, but it was mainly just the big two on the infield. They acquired Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, both of whom are all-star caliber players. Now Marcus Semien is in a little bit of a slump lately. Had a really hot month of July, a really hot month of June as well. Was absolutely on fire. Corey Seager has had his moments where he has been the hottest hitter in baseball. He's also had some slumps. He's also had some questionable defensive moments. But overall, Corey Seager has been pretty much worth what the Rangers paid him. He's got a 796 OPS, but at this point, that's actually not leading the everyday regulars. That's Nathaniel Lowe at 797, just 1 point ahead of him. But this team has made some great leaps. We're going to get into who has made some big leaps offensively, what the Rangers' holes still are, and what we can still learn about this team going forward through the end of the season. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar, the absolutely delicious, best-tasting protein bar that has ever existed. I started my morning with it. Today, a peanut butter brownie. Built Bar, they're absolutely delicious. It is a great way to start your morning. It's something that, you can wake up and have something to look forward to. And you get out of bed, you're like, ooh, I can get myself a Built Bar. And it tastes delicious. It's going to start my day off right. I'm going to feel full. I'm not going to have to go and cook myself a whole breakfast. Not going to have to, crack those eggs and prepare them however I want to and clean stuff up. No, all you have to do is peel back that wrapper and eat something that's delicious and absolutely good for you as well. Run to Built.com, snag yourself a box. They've got the cookie dough chunk puffs that are new. They are delicious. A fantastic way to start your day. I'll probably start my day off tomorrow with those, but they are so good. Go check them out. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Now, let's look at the pitching on this team. What has gone right, what has gone poorly, and if you're going to start with what has gone right, you have to start with Martin Perez, a 3.7 WAR player. To this point, signed a 1-year, $4 million deal. That when he signed, I said, meh, fine. They need some depth. He'll be fine. He has been more than fine. He has been absolutely fantastic. One of the best pitchers in baseball, by far the best pitcher on this Rangers roster. He started 21 games, has a 2.47 ERA, 131 innings, 116 strikeouts, just half a home run per 9 innings, 2.6 walks per 9, and 8 strikeouts per 9, which is, fairly solid for him. But you look at some of his expected numbers, some of the other advanced numbers, there's a whole lot of red in his baseball savant page. walk percentage in the top 60% of baseball, barrel percentage the top 10% of baseball, hard hit percentage, expected slugging, both of those, as well as expected ERA/expected WOBA in the top quarter of baseball. He is just hitting his spots. He is not doing anything terribly differently. He's doing his sinker a lot more, his four-seamer a whole lot less, the cutter significantly less as well. But he has just been a different pitcher this year. He's felt very, very confident on the mound. He has had some really, really great starts, including a start against the Astros where he threw a complete game shutout, was absolutely dominant. The Rangers needed that in such a bad way at that point, and that really kind of kickstarted what ended up being a great month of May, the best month of the season for this Rangers squad, the only month of the season so far where they have been above 500. I don't think they're going to get there in August. They've got a really, really rough schedule in the month of August. They've got this series against the Houston Astros. They've got a series coming up against Seattle, who has just absolutely annihilated the Rangers this season. Just absolutely annihilated them. At this point, the Rangers are 2-11 against the Seattle Mariners. It feels like every single one of those games is a one-run loss outside of the blowouts. But the Rangers just have not done well against them. They also haven't done well against the Astros. At this point, they're 3-8 against the Astros, so a slightly better record, but still not the record you want against two of your divisional opponents. Now, the Rangers have taken care of business against the lesser opponents in this division. They are 8-5 against the Angels on the season, and against Oakland, they are also 8-5. Those are what you need to do against the teams that are worse than you, and hilariously, the Angels are worse than the Rangers this year. Despite having Shohei Ohtani, a historic player, despite having Mike Trout, who granted has missed some time, but is still on his Mike Trout nonsense when he is on the field, the Rangers are dominating those Angels, and the Rangers sweeping them is kind of what felt like knocked things off the rails for that Angels squad. But the month of August is just not going to be kind to the Rangers. They have, like I said, those two series against the teams that have absolutely dominated them. They should have won their series against the White Sox. They started off the month getting swept by the Orioles. Not a great way to start off any month. And they're going down to Houston, where they just have not been able to do well. That complete game shutout in Houston that Martin Perez threw, that was the first Rangers win in Houston since, I want to say, 2019. It's been a hot minute since the Rangers have won in Houston. Maybe they had one win in 2020, but for the most part, the Rangers have been gobsmacked in Minute Maid Park. But the Rangers will have a 4-game series against the A's at home starting on the 15th. They'll go to the Twins. They'll go to the Rockies for a couple games, finish up the month with a series against Detroit, and then a 2-game series. Well, it might be 3. I can't see if they're playing one in September. Have to assume that it will be a 3-game series against the Astros at home to finish out the month. So the Rangers have, 1, 2, 3, 4 series against playoff teams at this point between them and the end of August. So yeah, it might get a little rough before it gets better. They'll have a 4-game series against the Red Sox. So no, it is just a 2-game series at Houston, or against Houston at the end of the month. But then they finish the season. It does not get a whole lot easier. They got a 4-game series at Boston. They got 3 games against the Jays. They've got that doubleheader against the Marlins, where they have to go from Globe Life Field to Miami to play 2 games there, then come back home for a 2-game series against the A's, had to go to the Rays. They have to play against the Guardians for 3 games. They have another 3-game series in Anaheim, and they finish out the season with a 4-game series in 3 days against the Yankees, a doubleheader on that Tuesday randomly because Rob Manfred and the stupid lockout. But the Rangers have a tough go of it towards the end of this season. They could have taken advantage of the teams that they should have beaten in July. They kind of felt like they really missed a lot of opportunities there. They did well against the Twins. They had a really rough series against the Mariners with 2 run losses there. They should have beaten the A's more than they did. But again, this is just what happens. The Rangers didn't take advantage when the schedule was easy, and they paid for it in the month of June as well. They could have done a whole lot better, but they just didn't take advantage of their opportunities. So that's kind of where they are. They knew the schedule was going to get harder in August, and they have not taken advantage of it. So this team is probably going to end up with a record that looks a lot worse than the improvement this team has actually made. Talking about improvement in pitching, Jon Gray has been very consistent for the Rangers. Before getting hurt, I was a little worried about his injury history, and talking with Grant, seeing what he's seen and how much he throws the slider, and also just the angle that he throws. Grant explained it so much better. I'm going to try to have him on soon to explain what the deal is with Jon Gray and why there was going to be some elbow injury coming up. But turns out this is an oblique injury that landed him on the IL and not whatever that was. But overall on the season, 3.83 ERA in 19 starts, 103 innings, 116 strikeouts. He's been by far the best, pretty much the only good strikeout pitcher in the Rangers starting rotation this year, which I would like them to have more people with a Ks per 9 over 9, but that's just kind of where the Rangers are at this point. I think they will get more of those next year as some of these top prospects start to matriculate in the big leagues. They've got a little bit more strikeout stuff, and they're definitely going to make a big impact on that strikeout rate. But the other big benefits on the season, the other big positives in the pitching staff has been Matt Moore. His 1.94 ERA is markedly better than I ever thought it could be. 51 innings, 54 strikeouts. He's also had some pretty good strikeout stuff. Matt Bush did a really great job with the Rangers and then netted a pretty darn impressive return. Hope that he can stay healthy and go thrive in Milwaukee. Wishing him nothing but the best in his actual inspiring comeback story. And also Brock Burke has been an absolute revelation out of that pen. Coming up, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how great Brock Burke has been, what has been impressive on the Rangers offensive side, and what parts of their offense they need to improve next year to be an actual competitive team. But first, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can go bet on some of these Rangers games. If you're feeling real feisty, I bet the Rangers don't have great odds to win this series in Houston, but this would be a really nice series to win. Not that there's a bad series to win in Houston, but especially if Martin Perez is on the hill, this might be a good game to bet on the Rangers to get a rare win in Houston. If you're feeling feisty, go check that out. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have got you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action happening today. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Now, Brock Burke might be the single biggest pitching win of the season, if not for Martin Perez. If they can get him under contract, then Martin Perez just soars to the top of the list of what has been super effective. And I do think they are still going to try and bring him back into a starting role. He was a starting pitcher with the Rangers until that shoulder injury. This year, they moved him to the pen after a really terrible year. Last year, after the shoulder surgery, coming back, he pitched in 2019 in the big leagues, just was not very effective as a starter. 6 games, a 7.43 ERA. Felt like he was better than that, but the numbers were just really rough for him. 6 home runs in 26 2/3 innings, 11 walks, and just 14 strikeouts. That's 2 home runs per 9, 3.7 walks per 9, and just 4.7 strikeouts per 9. His stuff has played way up this year. He has been lethal out of that bullpen, and he honestly should get some Rookie of the Year votes. He's been that good. A 1.11 ERA in 36 games, 56 2/3 innings, just 13 walks, just 3 home runs, and 63 strikeouts. That's half a homer per 9, 2.1 walks per 9, and 10 Ks per 9 for the guy who has been the best reliever in this Rangers pen all season. He's come in big moments, pitched multiple innings, been absolutely dominant when the Rangers have needed him the most, has the most 2 innings with 0 run outings of any reliever in baseball this year, and I believe Matt Moore is also right up there with him. Both these guys just come in, they shut the door down for a couple innings, and with the Rangers having starters that have not been able to get very deep into games for the most part, Taylor Hearn really struggled with that. Spencer Howard has super struggled with that and a lot of things this year, and even Glenn Otto, when he's going deep for him is about 5 innings, which, not to get cast any aspersions against him, because he probably should not be in the starting rotation, because I think long-term he's a reliever. He has also done very well, but the Rangers have needed these multi-inning guys, and they have stepped up in a huge way this season, and it has been much needed for the squad. Jonathan Hernandez has also been a huge pitching win, getting him back and healthy, and him being basically the same level of effective that he was in his short stint in the big leagues the last time he was up before he suffered Tommy John surgery. I believe that was, yes, in 2020. Also pitched a little bit in 2019, but was absolutely disgusting in his 2020 season. One of the few highlights of that Rangers 2020 season this year. In 7 innings, he has a 2.57 ERA, 7 strikeouts, 2 walks, has not allowed a home run yet. He is the Rangers closer. He's got that 99-mile-an-hour sinker that is just absolutely nasty. Got a slider that's nasty as well to go with it, and a changeup that is straight up filthy as well, that he will throw a decent amount of the time. He seems like the long-term solution as the Rangers closer. Getting him back up to the big leagues, I felt like the second they felt like he was back to his old self, he would jump into that closer's role. Joe Barlow has had his moments this year. He is going to be coming back as well, and him in a middle inning kind of role, I think, is what's best for him. He's got some decent stuff. He knows how to pitch pretty well, but I don't think he's quite closer stuff, if that makes sense. But the Rangers offense has had a lot more positive developments than the Rangers pitching staff this year in the minor leagues and in the major leagues. But the major leagues, the biggest improvement this year has been Jonah Heim. Now, he has been struggling a little bit lately, but for the month of April, and it was just April, there was no March this year, but he was absolutely fantastic. And so far on the season, he's their 4th most valuable player according to WAR, a 2.64 season for him at this point. He's been hovering right around 2.64 because he's kind of stalling out just a little bit as of late. Has not been super hot, but in the first half of the season, a 281 OPS in 69 games, 12 home runs. He's got 13 of them dingers on the season, 16 doubles. He has been a revelation. Had a horrible year last year, was much better than his numbers indicated. We all knew that he would be a little bit better, but not this. He might end up taking the starting role from Mitch Garver next year, who was a pretty big disappointment this year in terms of health. When he was healthy, he was great, but he was never healthy at all this season. I wish the Rangers had done a little bit more. I don't know if they could have caught that, if they should have caught that. He knew that his elbow was bothering him. I wish he would have kind of said something when the Rangers got him. Maybe they would have had to given up an even lesser prospect in their system to go get him, but it ended up being a pretty darn good trade. The Rangers got decent value out of him while he was healthy, and he has got that surgery. He's going to be healthy for next year. Having a catching tandem of Mitch Garver and Jonah Heim next year, I'm assuming that it'll be Mitch Garver DHing whenever he is not catching. I don't know if that'll be the case for Jonah Heim, but that big Mitch Garver bat has shown some promise, showed how streaky he can get and how he can kind of carry an Rangers offense for a minute when he is on one of those crazy streaks. And Mabrius Valoria is another big win. 16 games for him on the season, 846 OPS as a backup catcher, on base of 286, and has 2 home runs and 1 double in those 16 games. He has been huge for the Rangers. The Rangers have even DH'd him a couple times because that's how big his bat has been. Also kind of more of an indictment on what the Rangers have in terms of bench bat options. But also, maybe Shalori has just had some really good plate appearances at the big league level this season and at AAA. He did a great job there, earned another stint in the big leagues, and has crushed it as of late in a backup to who was supposed to be the backup at the start of this season. Leody Taveras has also been a huge developmental win for the Rangers as of late. He is scuffling some of those expected numbers, or his regular numbers are getting back to where those expected numbers would be. 11 doubles for him on the season, 3 homers, not 13 homers. That would be much better in his 48 games this season. A 766 OPS, which makes him a 1.4 WAR player. He has jumped ahead of Matt Moore. He is just behind Brock Burke. He is gaining ground. Well, actually, he is pretty far away from Burke and Adolis Garcia. 1 WAR behind Burke, 1.2 WAR behind Adolis Garcia. But he is playing that exceptional center field defense, running, causing havoc on the base paths, having much better at bats than he did last year, and having this sustained run of success. It's been huge for him. Another guy who has taken another big step this year, Nathaniel Lowe. The Rangers' first baseman has been, well, again, still trash defensively, but offensively he is fit the bill. He has a 797 OPS, which leads the Rangers an on-base of 333, slugging 464 with 16 dingers, 18 doubles, and 2 triples. His OPS is 27% above league average at his position. By the way, Jonah Heim's 768 OPS on the season is 19% above league average at the catching position, which has been in a bit of a downturn this year. He was right there on the precipice of being an all-star. Nathaniel Lowe, not quite there, but still a solid season for him. Has shown he can be a middle-of-the-order bat on this team. Probably on a contending team, he is more of a 5-6 hole kind of guy than he is a 3 hole or cleanup kind of guy on this club. But he has been a solid offensive contributor. At times, he has carried this Rangers offense. He is hot as all heck right now, and Chris Woodward called him the hottest bat on the Rangers at this point. For the season, he has shown some encouraging developments. I'm still a little skeptical on the trade, but it seems like the Rangers got a good deal on a guy who they needed an okay first baseman, even though I still think they should have stuck with Ron Guzman, who, by the way, in case you didn't know, is in AAA with the Yankees. And he's also a pitcher at this point, throwing in the upper 90s. I want to say that he's touched 100. That 6'7" Condor is crushing it right now as a two-way player, and I'm very encouraged for him. But in the last 14 days, he has an OPS, Nathaniel Lowe that is, of 1,016. He's got a pair of home runs, 3 doubles, 1 triple, hitting 375 on base of 412, just absolutely crushing it the last 2 weeks. In the last 14 days in 24 games, he has got 4 dingers, 6 doubles, an OPS of 829, and has just been well above league average. Even if you look at the last 365 days, for the second half last year to all of this season so far, 151 games for him, 22 bombs, 29 doubles, an OPS of 814. That is really solid, and that is about what you're looking for out of him. I do think he might end up getting pushed to DH next year when they put Josh Young either at first base, or maybe they don't. Maybe they stick with him. Maybe they even have. Maybe they even stop the Mitch Garver catching experiment, which I don't think they will or should. But Nathaniel Lowe has proven he is a key cog in this Rangers offense. The other people who have taken some big steps this year, Adolis Garcia, proving that he is a big league regular. That has been a huge development for the Rangers. Average exit velo is in the top 8% of baseball. He's striking out kind of around the same as last year, a little bit better, striking out 28.2% of the time, which is 3% less than last year. He is walking 1% more of the time, at 6.1%. Major League Baseball average is 8.4% walk rate. He's probably not going to be league average, and that's fine. He is hitting the crap out of the baseball. He is still providing that great defensive value in center field, in right field, wherever the Rangers need it. He is still fast as all heck. He is still incredibly strong. 18 dingers for him on the season, an OPS of 746. The only statistical bars that I want him to hit, I want an OPS over 750. He's 4 points below that, and his on-base is at 296. I wanted that over 300. Literally a 5-point on-base percentage bump by the end of the season. Keep the slugging percentage where he is. He hits both those marks, 2 birds, 1 stone. That would be a very encouraging development. He's shown he is a big league regular, and above average big league regular, I'd say. A 2.64 season for him at this point through 104 games on the year. He has been super consistent for the Rangers, providing value offensively, defensively, providing that spark, providing that fun that, as much as I love Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, those guys aren't necessarily nearly as outspoken, as loud and boisterous and celebratory as Adolis Garcia. So he brings a lot of that to the clubhouse, on the field, the product that makes it fun to watch. And that is one thing you cannot qualify. The expected fun rate of Adolis Garcia has got to be in the 100 percentile of all of Major League Baseball, because he makes the game so much more fun. But it has been overall a frustrating season, but there have been a lot of encouraging signs, and it's easy to miss that when you have an 18 games in 18 days after the All-Star break. It's easy to get lost in that before you take a step back and realize that this has been about what the Rangers wanted to be. This is a season where you've checked most of the boxes. Granted, Marcus Semien has had some disappointing moments. He has stepped up in the second half. He is in a bit of a slump in the last 3 weeks or so. But overall, if he doesn't start in a horrendous way next year, same thing for Corey Seager. Both those guys do about what they've done for the last 3 months for most of the season. Next year, the Rangers will be in a spot to contend. They need to upgrade that pen. They need to upgrade the starting rotation with at least one, if not more, arms. And we'll see how Cole Reagans can do. That's one thing that I think I'm going to be watching most closely throughout the end of the season, along with can Jonah Heim sustain this. Josh Smith and Ezekiel Duran, both those guys, every one of their at-bats, I'm going to be watching very, very closely, as well as Bubba Thompson, who is a big leaguer, has been struggling a little bit since that first base hit, only 2 hits, a 267 OPS at this point, but he's still providing some decent value in left field. I don't think he's an everyday big league regular, but at this point he's made his big league debut, and no one can give that dude status back because that dude is a major leaguer for all time and forever. That's going to do it for today's episode. Tune in tomorrow. I'll be talking about the Rangers' first game against the Astros in the series, how Martin Perez did, and we'll see whatever else comes up between now and then. Thank y'all so much for listening. Go check out Locked On MLB for your next listen. That'll do it for this edition of Locked On Rangers, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.